Okay, we've got a couple of rapid fire questions here for you because I know, well, let's say this one can be rapid fire. Okay, SIBO. SIBO seems to be quite trendy. I've heard it kicked around a fair bit. And I'm just wondering...
What does the acronym SIBO stand for? And what does it mean?
Small intestine bacterial overgrowth.
Very
Small
good.
intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah. So I know that anyway, which I imagine it's something to do with like, yeasts, because you often hear of candida or these kind of things. Is there anything to do with that?
Not really. Not
Good
really.
effort,
Different
Dave.
issue, but
Listen,
good. Close.
I'm having a punt
But
at it.
maybe, maybe it may well, there's a bit of overlap there. So I guess that's something that we're hearing a lot about in the digestive health world. And it's an entity that we've known about in gastroenterology for maybe 10 years or so. I think it's being misrepresented a little bit. Sometimes in social media, I'd see SIBO being put forward as the source of all problems. I get a lot of patients who come to see me with fairly profound digestive health symptoms who need a workup. They need to be checked out. But they've come to me firmly believing that the only thing that could possibly be wrong with them is this condition called SIBO. So we talked earlier about our gut microbiome, which largely lives in our colon. The gut microbiome is very microbial. The colon is very gut microbial rich environment. It's home to trillions and trillions of microbes. And as those microbes ferment and digest food to make the short chain fatty acids and the other postbiotics, it generates gas and liquid and postbiotic substances. Now, our large bowel is ready for that. The colon has evolved to cope with that. It's part of its function within the human body. It's used to being one of the most microbial rich environments known on the planet,
as well
right?
as soil, isn't soil kind of just as like proper? Soil is meant to be one of the only other places in the planet which is just as
microbially rich as the human large intestine or other animals' large
intestines. What happens if you
intestines.
plant a human? No,
But the thing is, the small
You all
intestine,
laugh, though.
the small intestine, which is the part of the digestive tract which is further up, it links like your stomach to your large bowel. It's about 12 feet long and it's a narrow, long tube. It's got a completely different mission in life. So that's where you do your absorption of nutrients predominantly. That's where bile mixes with the food to emulsify it. That's where you absorb your iron
So that's
and
where
your
you turn
folate.
food into you.
Yeah,
That's where
exactly. That's
the
where
food is turned into you.
the majority of the absorption occurs. So that's the small intestine's function in life.
Okay,
basically.
Absorption, yeah.
And it's also got a different ecosystem, a different microbial ecosystem. It's got far fewer bacteria and viruses and yeast. It's got like substantially by order of magnitudes fewer bacteria living in it. So the concept of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is that the small intestinal gut microbiome begins to behave like the colon's microbiome.
Okay.
So that the
Colon, you're
microbes-
referring to the large
as the
intestine.
large bowel.
Yeah.
So for some reason, the bugs in your small bowel get disturbed or perturbed, and the wrong sort of bugs begin to grow there, or too many of the wrong sorts of bugs start to grow there. So now you've got fermentation and postbiotics and gas production and fluid production going on in the small bowel, which isn't geared up for that. And what does that cause? It causes bloating, abdominal distension. In severe cases, it can interfere with the absorption of nutrients. It can cause weight loss. It can even cause maybe inflammatory changes or permeability changes in the small bowel that are, have a negative impact on human health. So that's the concept of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Now, most gastroenterologists recognize that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth can be a problem, but we don't really consider it being a disease in and of itself. It's more like a sign of a problem. So we generally, when we see someone who we think they may have SIBO, how do we deal with it? Well, some of the things that can predispose to it can be long-term medication use that can interfere with healthy gut colonization function. So, if you're taking a lot of opiate painkillers, codeine, anything that can constipate you, painkillers that constipate you were used a lot in the 21st century. Things like codeine and opiates and fentanyl and morphine and MS-Contin and all those things. They slow down your gut function. They can predispose you to gut microbiome problems like SIBO. Also, the overuse of proton pump inhibitors. We talked about this earlier. So if you've been on omeprazole or lansoprazole for a long time, reduces the acidity in your stomach, which perturbs how your gut microbiome is populated. So it gives you an increased risk of these wrong bacteria growing in your small bowel. But generally, for patients with SIBO, we would generally recognize it as happening in perhaps older individuals who've been on those medications for a long time, but also in people who've got very profound digestive problems like Crohn's disease with strictures, or they've had an operation, so their bowel has been, resected and replumbed, so they've got little bits of their bowel that are just sitting there growing lots of bacteria.
Junctions.
And if we suspect someone has it, we'll do a history and a workup. We'll check for Crohn's disease, celiac disease, and diabetes, etc. But sometimes we do use certain antibiotics to try and push that gut microbiome back in a favorable direction. So we're familiar with antibiotics. We're familiar with probiotics. So here's another new word for you. Eubiotics. So a medication.
I thought you were going to say prebiotics there, and I was like, no, I know.
I know that one. You know that one. You know fiber and prebiotics.
I almost think of a eubiotic like the U-bend in a toilet. It's pushing it down the toilet, and that's what in essence, this eubiotic is to push the excess growth of bacteria from the small intestine down into the large intestine or into the colon.
Push it. That's a good analogy, actually. But when you say about eubiosis, we're trying to push things. But everybody poos. Everybody poos. I mean, essentially, we're talking about poop here, right? But what we're doing here is we're pushing the gut microbes into a favorable direction.
Okay, second rapid fire question.
But if we don't address the issues that led to that problem, like unhealthy diet, constipation, medication overuse, or underlying conditions, we're not going to fix the problem long term. And that's why I get a little bit nervous when I see companies offering mail order kits for you to check for SIBO at home, and then they'll sell you some antimicrobials or something. Because it's like most of medicine, you can't just take it in isolation. You got to look at the whole person. You got to take a history. You got to...
And it sounds like the basics, like as you said there, it's the basics, like whether you're talking gut health, heart health, skin health, weight, whatever it is. It's, food, as you said, which, a plant-based or plant-predominant, eat more whole foods, because the average person is eating mostly refined and animal-based foods. It's to sleep more. It's to move plenty. It's to spend time in nature.
Avoid stress.
And avoid